All right, this video is going to help us learn how to make random choices in Flowlab. So we're going to start off in Flowlab on your account by choosing My Games. And here's a list of the games that you've made. I've got a bunch of them because I keep demoing stuff and making cool things. We're going to create a new game, click on the green button. And when you get there, the first thing you got to do is click Empty Project, OK. And now we're going to name it. So we go to Settings. We're going to call this Random Acts. Now, the Random Acts thing is going to teach us how to create objects, and we're going to put them randomly across the top. We're not going to move them yet, although we could. And so what we're going to work with is we're just going to randomly place some select objects. I'm going to go ahead and change my background color. Always pick a better color. White's just a horrible background color. And as you're developing these background colors or background scenes, you're always trying to think about contrast. Now, if I have a blue background and the same color blue for my creatures or my ships or whatever, they're not going to show up. So I need to think about making things that contrast so they're visible and playable in the game. So I'm going to create some new objects. I'm going to make NPC 1, NPC 2, and NPC 3. So I'm not going to remember what they look like right now, but I do need to name them. So I'm going to copy this so I can paste it into the next one. So there's one. And you can design these to make them look like ships or creatures or whatever you want. But right now we're just trying to create things that are going to show up. So this is going to be NPC 2. So I'm going to paste the other one and paste that. So now I've got NPC 2. And I'm going to make NPC 3. So NPC 3. And change the number. Okay, so sometimes I like to copy and paste things to make the process easier and quicker. Okay, so let's go ahead and we should probably make these movable. So if I edit each one of these and go to physics, we're going to make it movable. Now assume we don't want gravity. Okay, so we're making them like ships that move on their own in space. And in space there's mostly no gravity. So I'm just going to uncheck gravity and check movable. Let's do it again. Let's go to this one, edit, physics, movable, and gravity off. Now later on, depending on which way they're traveling, we may want to set the direction to down. So let's go back to this one and set that one the same way. Physics, direction down. And there's one I still didn't do yet, which is this one, where I can take care of all those issues. So movable, not affected by gravity, and pointing down. Later you can replace these with graphics of ships or draw them yourself in the pixel editor. Okay, so those are the pieces we're going to work with. And I'm just going to move those up out of the way. And we're going to make a thing called the NPC generator. I'll call it Gen. Sometimes I like to shorten things up. As long as you know what it means and what it is, a name is always essential that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to quickly change the look of this thing. And this is just to identify it like I didn't identify the other ones. I know, I hear what you're saying. So let's make a G out of this. Horrible looking G. I'm happy with it. It's fine. So there's my G. And what this is going to do, we're going to have some behaviors in it. And its job is to generate new of the other objects out there. So we're going to choose behaviors. And we're going to use a timer. So the timer does not need input. We can later talk about how to use input to change the timer every time. We want to repeat forever. And we're going to set this to like 0.8 of a second or whatever. You can mess with that later as you find out what works or what doesn't work. Or how fast you want to generate things. So every 0.8 of a second, we're going to generate a random number. So that's in the logic and math section, random. And this number's job is to determine if it's time to generate a new object or not. So not just every 0.8 of a second. We don't want to have a rhythm. We want a rhythm that sometimes makes it work and sometimes doesn't. So if we choose 0 to 10, then we'll create a funnel or filter that just determines if that's the number we want. So if we just test this and say new, then we can actually use a number to test it. So let's try that out. Always a good idea to test every step of the way as possible. So set and run it. So now you can see it's going to be 4, 5, 1, etc., etc. Let's move this up here. It works. We got what we wanted. Now we're going to get a filter. Now a filter's job is to figure out does it meet a certain criteria. So we have a list of criteria possibilities. Let's say if it's less than 35. Oh, 3. How about 3? Yeah, because it was 1 to 10, not 0 to 10, not 0 to 100. So let's go with 0 to 4. How about? So if it's less than 4, then we'll do this thing. So So there we go. So if the number that comes out is less than 4, then what we can do there is just to test this. If we run that to the plus, this will tell us when it worked. And so the question, yeah, okay. So it's adding up a number every time we pass the number. So it takes the number and passes it all the way through. So what we can do with this is go, okay, if the number meets certain criteria, then we want to do certain other things like create those objects. Now the way that we can create this, now we've got the random, is we're going to use a router. And the router can actually funnel out to several things. Now we have 3 things to pick from, so we want 3 available routes. So we got that. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this some of these test numbers up here. It's just to make things easier. And so if it passes that, then we're going to select something, and we also need to choose the N. Okay, so the quiz we did today did not cover the router. So what this does is it says select a specific route, and that would be based on an input. Always increment the route or randomize. We're going to randomize this. So besides using the random, this is actually new as of a couple of releases ago. It's going to randomly pick which object to use. So to do this, we're going to use a component called spawn. Okay. Now it's going to need to know where to go. So I'm going to get 3 spawners, total of 3. So I clicked it 3 times, and I have to tell it which thing to spawn. So I got NPC 1, I got NPC 2, and I got NPC 3. Looks like I put these too close together. They're overlapping, so let's do it this way. And it needs to know where to go. So each one of them is going to get a random spot to go to. So let me move this over because I need to find room for another random. Logic and math, random. Okay, so when it generates the thing, it needs to know where to go. And there's 2 things it needs to know, the X and the Y position. The Y will always be static. Now for now, I'm going to generate these along, say, 75. Oops, not 745, 75. There we go. And so that's going to be the Y position for all of these. So it's always going to be consistently going to near the top of the screen. Okay, so we're going to take this and let's see, as we pass this, it's going to do a get. And it's also going to take the pass and send it to the new on the random. So the new on the random is going to be the width of my screen, which at this time is 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 10 grids. That means 320 because each grid is 32 pixels. So 0 to 320, where it's going to put it. And once it does that, we're going to run that number to the X on each of these. Now that should work. Let's test and see what happens. You know it's not connected? Nothing's happening because the spawns are not connected. So when that happens, plus we didn't connect the router. How silly of us. I know, you're like, us, it's your fault, Campbell. You did it wrong. All right, so we're going to take the router and choose which one to spawn. So 1, 2, and 3. So it's connecting from the out, 1, out, 2, out, 3 to the spawn on the NPC 1, 2, 3. So let's see if that works. All right, so we're waiting for the numbers to qualify. There's one showing up. There's another one. So you can see which one gets picked by which thing lights up over here. And if it's not generating enough of them to test, oh, did we set this to random? I think we did. Yep, it's randomizing. So it's now placing them there. And later you can make them move. So that's pretty much the whole lab on this one. And we'll use that later for making a space game. Rock on.